In the peaceful village of Tondora, a baby girl named Mihana was born to Chief Adoro and his beloved wife, Nekesa. From the moment she opened her eyes, Mihana was cherished by her parents. Her father, a respected leader, adored her, and her mother showered her with love. The people of Tondora often admired how beautiful and bright Mihana was, saying she had her mother's gentle heart and her father's strong spirit. But happiness does not always last. When Mihana was still a little girl, tragedy struck. Nekesa fell mysteriously ill, and despite the efforts of the village healers, she passed away. Chief Adoro was heartbroken, and Mihana, too young to fully understand, could only cry in confusion as her mother was taken away forever. The warmth in their home slowly faded, replaced by an emptiness that could not be filled. After some time, Chief Adoro remarried. His new wife, Zalira, arrived in the village with her daughter Wasina, who was the same age as Mihana. At first it seemed like a fresh start, and the villagers hoped this new family would bring happiness back into Chief Adoro's life. Zalira appeared kind, always smiling in front of others, and speaking sweetly to Mihana. But behind closed doors, her heart was full of jealousy and bitterness. She could see how much Chief Adoro loved Mihana, and it made her furious. No matter how hard she tried to win his affection, he always placed his daughter first. As Mihana grew, her beauty and intelligence became more noticeable, and this only deepened Zalira's hatred. Wasina, spoiled and selfish, took after her mother, always seeking attention and praise. Whenever she saw her mother frown at Mihana, she knew she should do the same. Mihana, innocent and kind, did not understand why Wasina and Zalira treated her differently. She only wanted a sister's love, but in their hearts, they saw her as a rival. Though no one else noticed, a silent war had begun inside their home. Zalira smiled in front of Chief Adoro, but secretly plotted against Mihana, and with each passing day, her hatred grew stronger, like a dark storm waiting to break. As the years passed, Mihana grew into a beautiful and intelligent young girl, but life in her own home became unbearable. Zalira, who once pretended to care for her, no longer hid her true feelings. She saw Mihana as a threat, too beautiful, too kind, too loved by the villagers. She could not stand the way people admired the girl, or how her late husband had cherished her. Slowly, her cruelty began to show, not in loud outbursts, but in quiet, painful ways that no one else noticed. At first, it was simple things. Zalira would give Mihana the smallest portion of food, claiming there wasn't enough to go around. Some nights, she would send her to bed hungry, laughing as she and Wasina ate the best portions. When Mihana complained, Zalira would act as if she had done nothing wrong, making the girl feel helpless. As time went on, things got worse. She ordered Mihana to do all the chores in the house, washing clothes, cooking, scrubbing the floors, while Wasina sat around, enjoying the luxury of being the favored daughter. No matter how hard Mihana worked, Zalira always found a reason to punish her. It wasn't enough to take away Mihana's food or treat her like a servant. Zalira wanted to break her completely. One evening, after a long day of chores, she threw Mihana out of the house, telling her she was no longer worthy of sleeping under the same roof as them. The girl was forced to sleep outside on the cold ground, shivering under the open sky. Even when it rained, Zalira did not let her in. Wasina, who had inherited her mother's cruelty, would stand by the doorway, laughing at Mihana's misery. Despite everything, Mihana refused to let bitterness consume her. She did not understand why her stepmother hated her so much, but she knew one thing: she would not let them destroy her spirit. When the pain of hunger and exhaustion became too much, she found comfort in the presence of Baba Muntu, an old healer who lived at the edge of the village. Unlike Zalira, he saw Mihana's true worth. He taught her things that no one else did. He showed her how to survive with little food, how to heal wounds with herbs, and how to read the signs of danger before they arrived. He told her stories of strong women who had faced hardship and risen above it, and slowly, Mihana began to see that she too could be strong. She spent every moment she could with Baba Muntu, learning from his wisdom, and though her body remained trapped in a house filled with cruelty, her mind grew sharper, her heart tougher. She knew that one day she would find a way to escape the suffering that Zalira and Wasina had placed upon her. What she didn't know was that her greatest battle was yet to come. One quiet night, Chief Adoro suddenly fell ill. Just the day before, he had been strong and healthy, walking through the village and speaking with his people, but now he lay weak on his mat, sweating and gasping for breath. Mihana stayed by his side, holding his hand, her heart filled with fear. She begged Baba Muntu to help, but even his strongest herbs could not save him. Within a few days, her father was gone. The entire village mourned the loss of their great chief, but no one knew the terrible truth. Zalira had poisoned him. With Chief Adoro dead, Zalira now had full control of the household. She wasted no time in making sure everyone knew that she was in charge. She took all of Adoro's wealth and property, making it clear that Wasina would be the sole heir. But there was one problem. Mihana was still alive. As long as she lived, there was a chance the village elders could recognize her as Adoro's rightful daughter and give her what was hers. Zalira could not let that happen. She decided there was only one solution. Mihana had to die. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned deep orange, Zalira called Mihana into the house. She put on her sweetest smile and placed a wooden cup in front of her. The drink inside smelled of honey and herbs, a warm and inviting scent. "You must be tired, my child," Zalira said, her voice gentle. "Drink this. It will help you rest." But behind her smile, there was something cold in her eyes, something that made Mihana uneasy. Earlier that day, Baba Muntu had pulled Mihana aside, whispering a warning. "Be careful, child," he said. "I have seen the signs. Zalira's heart is black with evil, and I fear she will try to harm you." His words echoed in her mind as she looked at the cup in front of her. Something was not right. Mihana picked up the cup, pretending to take a sip. She let the warm liquid touch her lips, but did not swallow. Instead, she lowered the cup and smiled at Zalira, who watched her closely, waiting for her to collapse. "Thank you, mother," Mihana said softly. Then, when no one was looking, she poured the drink into a small bowl and set it outside, where a wild dog roamed near the house. The thirsty animal licked up the liquid eagerly. Within moments, it staggered, let out a weak cry, and fell lifeless to the ground. Mihana's heart pounded in her chest. The drink had been poisoned. If she had taken even a single sip, she would have been dead. She turned to look at the house where Zalira sat comfortably, thinking her plan had worked. Mihana knew then that she was not safe. If Zalira had already killed her father, there was nothing stopping her from trying again. Mihana had only two choices: stay and wait for her stepmother's next attack, or find a way to escape before it was too late. When morning came, Mihana pretended everything was normal. She moved about the house, doing her chores as usual, but inside, she was afraid. She knew that Zalira had tried to kill her once, and now that her plan had failed, she would surely try again. Mihana had to be careful, but Zalira was not a woman who gave up easily. The fact that Mihana was still alive filled her with rage. She knew she had to act quickly before anyone started to suspect her true intentions. That afternoon, Zalira called Mihana in a sickly sweet voice. "The house needs more water," she said. "Go to the old well and bring back as much as you can." Mihana's heart sank. She knew which well Zalira was talking about, the deepest one in the village, far from the homes and fields, standing alone in a quiet, deserted place. People rarely used it because it was said to be cursed. Stories had been told for generations about strange voices whispering from its depths, and those who had fallen inside had never been seen again. Mihana had no choice but to obey. Carrying a clay water pot, she walked through the dusty paths of the village, her steps slow and heavy. Wasina followed behind, pretending to be innocent, but Mihana could feel her eyes watching her closely. As they reached the well, the place was eerily silent. The air was dry, and the only sound was the soft rustling of leaves in the wind. Mihana took a deep breath and stepped forward. She placed her pot on the ground and leaned over, peering into the darkness below. The well was so deep that she could not see the water, only endless shadows stretching far beneath her. Just as she was about to lower the rope, she felt a sharp push from behind. Her body lurched forward. The ground slipped beneath her feet. For a moment, she felt weightless, the world spinning around her. Then, before she could scream, she plunged into the darkness. The cold air rushed past her ears, and the walls of the well blurred as she fell deeper and deeper. Then, splash! Ice-cold water swallowed her whole. Above, Wasina peered down with a wicked smile. She waited, listening for Mihana's cries, but there was nothing, only silence. A moment later, she turned and ran back to the village. When Wasina reached home, she rushed into the house, breathless with excitement. "It's done," she whispered to her mother. Zalira's lips curled into a smile. "Good," she said, a cruel glint in her eyes. "Now, everything belongs to us." That night, they celebrated, drinking sweet palm wine and laughing as if nothing had happened. To them, Mihana was gone forever. But what they did not know was that the well had not taken Mihana's life. Instead, Fate had something else in store for her. Mihana's body hit the freezing water, and for a moment she could not breathe. The darkness swallowed her, and she felt herself sinking deeper and deeper. Her arms thrashed wildly, but the well was deep, and the icy grip of the water pulled her down. Just as she thought she would lose consciousness, strong hands reached out from the shadows and grabbed her. She felt herself being lifted, pulled through an unseen passage beneath the water. Then, everything went black. When Mihana opened her eyes, she was no longer in the well. She was lying on a soft bed of animal skins, her body wrapped in warm blankets. Strange figures surrounded her, people dressed in dark robes, their faces painted with patterns that glowed faintly in the dim firelight. She gasped and tried to sit up, but a gentle hand rested on her shoulder. An elderly woman with piercing eyes and silver hair knelt beside her. "Rest, child," the woman said. "You are safe now. You are with the Nyamora." Mihana had heard whispers of the Nyamora before. The villagers believed they were spirits who lived beneath the land, unseen by ordinary people. Some said they were cursed ancestors, while others believed they were guardians of forgotten knowledge. Now she realized they were real, not spirits, but a hidden tribe that had survived for centuries in the underground caves of Tundora. For days, Mihana remained with the Nyamora as they nursed her back to health. They fed her rich soups, treated her wounds with strange herbs, and whispered secrets of the land that no outsider had ever known. Slowly, her strength returned, but she was no longer the same girl who had fallen into the well. She had been reborn. As she grew stronger, the Nyamora began to teach her their ways. A fierce warrior named Jengo trained her in combat, showing her how to move swiftly and strike without hesitation. An elder healer named Mama Lemba taught her the secrets of herbs and potions, showing her how to heal wounds and how to make poisons. But the most powerful lesson came from the chief of the Nyamora himself, an old man named Wamara. He taught her how to use fear as a weapon. "The mind is stronger than the sword," he told her. "Make your enemies believe you are a spirit, and they will destroy themselves with their own fear." Mihana listened, learned, and transformed. No longer was she the helpless girl who had been pushed into the well. She was stronger, wiser, and filled with a burning purpose. She had been given a second life, and she knew exactly what she would do with it. She would return to Tundora. She would make Zalira and Wasina pay for their cruelty, and she would reclaim the life that had been stolen from her. After many months with the Nyamora, Mihana was ready. She had learned how to move unseen, how to fight, and how to use fear against her enemies. But most importantly, she had learned patience. Revenge was not something to be rushed. It had to be carefully planned. So, when she finally left the hidden caves of the Nyamora and made her way back to Tundora, she did not reveal herself. Instead, she became a shadow, watching and waiting. When she arrived, she saw that Zalira and Wasina were living comfortably in the home that once belonged to her father. They wore fine clothes and golden bracelets, eating the best food while the villagers served them. It was as if Mihana had never existed. Zalira had taken everything for herself, and the people of Tundora, believing Mihana had died in the well, never questioned it. But Mihana was not dead, and soon the village would know. She started by whispering to the villagers at night. When the wind blew through the trees, some said they heard a voice calling their names. Others swore they saw a shadow move past their windows, disappearing before they could look properly. Mihana moved through the village like a ghost, leaving behind small signs of her presence. A child's toy she had once owned appeared on the doorstep of her old home. A mark that only she and her father used to carve was found on the walls. The villagers, already fearful of spirits, began to whisper among themselves. "Could it be Mihana?" they asked. "Has she returned from the dead?" When Zalira heard the rumors, she laughed at first. "Foolish people," she scoffed. "The dead do not return." But as the days passed, strange things continued to happen. Her golden bracelet went missing, only to reappear in the exact spot Mihana used to sit as a child. A servant claimed she saw a figure standing outside in the moonlight, watching the house. Wasina woke up screaming one night, saying she had dreamed of Mihana staring at her with cold, lifeless eyes. Fear began to creep into Zalira's heart. She tried to stay strong, but her mind would not let her rest. Every shadow, every sound in the night made her jump. She started to believe the whispers. Mihana was back, and she had come for revenge. Desperate to end the haunting, Zalira decided to do something drastic. She called for the village elders and declared that her house must be cleansed with fire. "If a spirit haunts this place," she said, "then we must burn it away." The villagers, already terrified, agreed. That night, Zalaira and Wasina gathered dry wood and oil, placing them around the house. With a torch in her shaking hand, Zalaira set the flames. The fire spread faster than she expected. Within moments, the house was engulfed, the heat licking at the walls, the smoke curling into the night sky. But as the flames roared, something terrible happened. The wind changed direction, and the fire, instead of cleansing, turned against them. The flames closed in, trapping Zalaira and Wasina inside. Zalaira screamed, trying to find a way out, but the fire was too strong. The same house she had stolen, the home she had betrayed to claim, had become her prison. And as the roof collapsed, the villagers could only watch in horror as the woman who had once ruled over them with cruelty met her fate. Mihana stood hidden in the shadows, watching as the fire consumed everything. She did not smile. She did not cheer. She simply watched. Justice had been served, not by her hands, but by the very fear and greed that had driven Zalaira to this moment. With her past finally buried in the ashes, Mihana turned away, disappearing into the night. But she was no longer the girl who had once lived in that house. She was something more, and her story was only just beginning. When the fire finally died down, the people of Tundora gathered around the ruins of the house that had once belonged to Chief Adoro. All that remained were blackened walls and piles of ash. The air was heavy with smoke, and the villagers stood in silence, knowing they had witnessed something beyond their understanding. Some whispered that it was the will of the ancestors. Others believed it was justice sent by the gods. But one thing was certain: Zalaira and Wasina were gone, and the shadow of their cruelty had finally lifted from the village. As the villagers talked among themselves, a figure stepped forward from the crowd. It was Mihana. Dressed in simple but elegant robes, she no longer looked like the helpless girl they once knew. There was strength in her posture, wisdom in her eyes. Gasps filled the air as people recognized her. "She is alive," someone murmured in awe. "She has returned." The village elders, the wisest and most respected men and women of Tundora, stepped forward. They looked at Mihana, then at the ruins of the house, and they knew this was no ordinary survival. This was divine justice. They bowed their heads and spoke as one. "The gods have chosen you, Mihana. You are meant to lead." The people of Tundora rejoiced. They welcomed Mihana back, not as a lost girl, but as the rightful daughter of Chief Adoro. Her father's lands, wealth, and title were returned to her, and she was given a place among the elders to help guide the village into a new era. But Mihana did not let power change her heart. She remembered the pain of being mistreated, the lessons of survival she had learned, and the kindness of those who had saved her. Her first act as leader was to honor those who had helped her. She visited Baba Muntu, the old healer who had once warned her of the poisoned drink, and gave him a place of honor in the village. No longer would he be seen as just an old man. He would be respected as a wise elder whose wisdom had saved a life. She also never forgot the Nyamora, the hidden tribe that had taken her in when she was lost. Though most of the village still feared them as spirits, Mihana knew the truth. She traveled back to the secret caves and knelt before Chief Wamara, offering him gifts of food and fine cloth. "You gave me life when I had none," she told him. "I will always be in your debt." Under Mihana's leadership, Tundora flourished. She made sure that no child would ever suffer as she had. She protected the weak, punished those who sought to harm others, and ruled with wisdom and kindness. The story of Mihana spread far beyond the village. Travelers spoke of the girl who had survived death, the leader who had risen from the ashes of betrayal, and the woman who had turned pain into strength. Some called her a legend, others called her a queen. But to the people of Tundora, she would always be Mihana, the girl who refused to be defeated.